Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Here's a story about my attempt to photograph a crawler. Be me. I live in a small town in the northern part of the U.S. Around December of 2022, there had been crawler sightings in my town. It got to the point where some people were seeing 2 or 3 at a time every few nights. I didn't believe the sightings at first, until one night I was driving back from my shitty Wagie job. Spot one walking along the road into the forest. It walked like both feet were nailed to a plank of wood. It was also gaunt with long, spindly limbs. The thing was naked and had white or gray skin. Didn't get a good look at its face. Doubt it was a homeless person or a drug addict due to how cold it was that night. Decide to try and get a photo. Come on to /x/ and ask for tips on cryptid photography. Get some good pointers about getting good camouflage and equipment. Best tip was to ask local hunters for advice. There are a few people who hunt for fun in my town, but most of them go to hunting preserves outside of the town. There are 2 dudes who do know how to hunt and have a good understanding of the area. I'll call them Martin and Jake. Martin is 30-ish, kinda shifty, and quiet. He moved to the area back in 2016 after getting in trouble with some of the law enforcement down south. He now spends most of his days walking aimlessly around the town when not drunk in his RV. Jake is 63 years old and has lived in the town since before most of the roads were properly paved. His father used to take him hunting in the woods when he was a child. Both men know a lot about the area and agreed to help me get a few photos. They tell me they want to wait for the storms to subside and the snow to melt a little. Decided that February 28th would be a nice date to shoot for. Agree. And during this time they teach me useful stuff like how to avoid detection by fox walking and making camo out of dead foliage. Slow sightings of the crawlers dwindled, and by late January there were only a few sightings every 2 weeks. The weather was also pretty bad, so we moved the trip to the 1st of March. The day of the trip comes around. We head into the woods. Jake has his father's old Garand. Martin has an old beat-up Winchester shotgun. We hiked in the woods for the first few hours, swapping stories and chatting about life. Nothing bad happened that first night. In the morning, we stumbled across something odd. It was a wolf, or what was left of it. It stunk to high heaven, and its head and stomach were the only parts left. The rest of the day we are more alert. No more fun stories after that. Martin wants to head back. It was still pretty cold too, and the previous night had been pretty bad. We decided to cut the trip short by 2 days and just spend one more day out. Jake says we should head to one of the creeks where a few animals usually congregate around. While we're walking to the creek, the smell returns, and it's downright nauseating. Martin starts getting vocal about wanting to head back. Jake also is starting to show concern. At this point, I felt maybe dicking around in crawler territory in wintertime wasn't the best of ideas. We decided that maybe it would just be best to head back to town and come back in the summer. On the way back, Jake says he knows a shortcut to where the van is. He says that there is this old stone path that leads us to the van. We follow, but something starts to feel off. My vision seems to feel off. The best way I can describe it is when an old camera struggles to catch up with rapid movement and everything is glitched. Martin starts saying something about his feet burning. Jake is basically dead quiet the whole time. Sun is starting to head down, and we are nowhere near the van. Ask Jake if we can sit down and tell him how my vision seems messed up. Jake doesn't respond. He just keeps walking forward. I ask if he is all right. No response. Martin asks Jake if something is wrong. No response. My head feels like it is on fire at this point, and I just sit because I just want the pain to stop. Martin starts yelling at Jake, but Jake just keeps moving forward. Finally, Martin shoves Jake to the ground. Jake asks what happened. He says he doesn't know what's going on. My headache was starting to subside a little, but the sun was finally dipping below the horizon. Jake asks where we are. Martin asks Jake what he remembers. He says he remembered us heading to the creek, and then everything after was a blank. We don't know what to do, and we start to panic. The sun goes down, and it's pitch black. This was the first time I realized how dark the night was without any streetlights or cars. It was like staring at a wall. Could only see like 3 feet in front of me. It was also so cold that it felt like needles were being shoved into my face. Fumble through my bag and pull out a flashlight. While searching for a flashlight, I hear Martin tries his best to bring Jake up to speed. Find it, and before I can say anything, Martin goes quiet. Jake goes quiet too. For 10 seconds, it is completely quiet. No animals, no wind, not even the sound of snow being crunched by footsteps. The smell hits my nose and it completely overtakes my nose. Start to cough and then look at Jake and Martin. They are pointing at something. Look to where they're pointing and see something white pass cut through a tree. Martin screams and points his Winchester at something. Jake starts to back away from Martin and towards me. Point the flashlight in the general direction of where Martin is pointing his gun. It's a crawler. Martin tries to fire his gun, but nothing happens. He tries again, and this time something does happen. The gun explodes. Birdshot flies everywhere, and Martin falls to the ground. Ears are ringing. Everyone is screaming. Catch a glimpse at the thing. It's taller than any man I've ever seen. The skin is gaunt and colorless. Limbs are spindly, way too weak to support this thing. The face is almost featureless. Almost. I say almost because the eyes are the main feature. Black, like a shark or a dog's eyes. Stare into them and am met with the worst feelings. It was like my mind went blank and every thought was instantly replaced with pure negative energy. It was like staring into eternity. It was one of the worst feelings, and I'm struggling to put into words what it was like. A loud bang fills the air. Jake has started firing the rifle and tells me to drag Martin. Martin is on the ground, writhing in agony, cursing and screaming about everything and everyone. Birdshot and bits of metal are embedded in his face, hands, and arms. Help him get onto his feet as I hear a ping. The thing is gone now, and it's just us. The wind starts picking up again. We drag Martin for about 40 minutes trying to reach a road. We are lucky enough to stumble upon a road a car picks us up. Martin had to get a few bandages and stitches. It's been a few days since the incident, and Martin got discharged from the hospital a few days ago. Paid for his hospital bills and tried to talk to him. We talked for only a few minutes about what we saw. The last thing he told me was that he was taking his RV and heading to the southwest. He left 2 days ago. Jake, on the other hand, plans on seeing his family in Florida in a few days. He gets uncomfortable every time I ask about what happened that night. And that's the story of how I saw a crawler and vowed to never go looking for cryptids.
One night in the summer, when I was about 10 or 11, I was awake in the middle of the night and I could hear the horses running around the pasture as if something had happened. I decided to get up and go check on things. At that time, my family had a massive old barn and we lived in the middle of nowhere. I walked through the door of the barn and found a very large man, as white as snow, climbing into the hayloft. I remember being startled but not scared. He turned around, looked at me, and slowly lowered himself back. He took a few steps before he knelt down and put out his hand, like one would do with a stray animal. As I looked at him, I felt like he looked sad and tired, and not at all like he would do me any harm. I decided to take his hand and walk him toward our kids' hangout space, which was just a space in the barn where we had some old couches, a few toys, and a radio. As soon as he saw the radio, he became more animated, ran towards it, and started messing around with it. That went on for a bit, and I kept asking him what he needed the radio for. He never said a word. Not one word. He wouldn't give me a name, so I started calling him Radio. After some time, he set the radio down and sat down on the couch. I brought over my favorite horse book and started thumbing through the pages, showing him all of my favorite horse breeds. Eventually, he gently took the book from me and closed it as if to say, "I'm done." I got up to put the book away and he lay down on the couch. I remember him being so large that his head was on the armrest while his legs hung over the other armrest, at the knee. He was a giant. Pure white, and I don't recall any hair. His eyes were jet black, but they weren't huge or angular. If anything, they slanted downward and were beady. After he fell asleep, I decided to go back in the house and go to bed, but I put a blanket over him before I went in. I woke up in the morning and the whole experience came flooding back to me. My feet were dirty as if I had been outside during the night. I grabbed some snacks and ran out to the barn. I ran to our hangout space and found everything as I would have expected it. The blanket was on the floor, the book was sitting on the table, and the radio was out of place. But he was gone. It's important to know that I had a habit of sleepwalking at this time in my life, so it's possible that this was all just a dream. At first, I thought he was just a very strange person and I hoped he found safety. The memory never left me, and by the time I was a teen I had decided that I dreamed the whole thing and let it go. Then the film Prometheus came out and I agreed to go see it with friends. When the tall white alien came on the screen I nearly jumped out of my seat. It wasn't an exact likeness, but it was like seeing a ghost. At the time, I knew absolutely nothing about aliens, and the only one I had ever heard of was the classic little green men. Nonetheless, I forced myself to let it go and move on. That memory could not be real, so I must have dreamed it. As time passed, I started wondering how I could have imagined a being that I had never heard of. Could that have really happened? Could radio be real?
In 2018, I visited some of my family who lived in South Dakota and worked there for the summer. After about a month, my brother, sister, and her husband decided to go shoot guns in the woods. I had to work an evening shift, so it was decided we'd go after around 10 p.m. Once my shift ended, we went to their house to pack up the truck with some snacks, guns, and ammo. The drive took around 45 minutes, and it took us up a dirt road surrounded by trees and tall grass. Eventually, it opened up into a clearing that was pretty open and flat. The nearest tree line was about 100 feet away. It was pretty dark, but the clearing was lit up by the truck's headlights. I kind of felt uneasy, but I chalked that up to just being in the woods at night. For the first 20 minutes, nothing really happened. We were just setting up plastic bottles and those plastic gallon buckets you'd get water out of at an office. There was a feeling of being watched that we all felt. The area suddenly reeked of spoiled eggs. Those of you who have shotguns know they can smell, but even since going into the military, no amount of guns explosions have smelled this bad. We looked around to see if we could see the source, and what I saw I can still vividly remember to this day. What I saw was a thin humanoid figure crouching down and looking at us. Even while crouching down, it was still about 6 feet in height. When I say this figure was thin, I mean skin and bones barely do it justice. The even weirder thing about this was we all saw the figure in different spots in the tree line, but we all described the same features. Tall, thin, and had long black hair. We quickly packed up what we could and left. The dreadful feeling that day will forever haunt me. Since then, my brother mentioned the area might have been in the native territory, but I don't know if that's true.
I'm a Wagie door-driver, PIC related, and I have encountered two weird things both late at night on roads in the middle of nowhere near the end of my shift. Okay, so I'm driving down this road with no light besides the headlights from my car and no neighboring houses, just forest and an old farm field. On the edge of my headlights for 1 second I see some kind of hand clutching a telephone pole. The hand was long and bony, unnaturally long, and had very thin dried out skin or no skin at all. Its color was somewhat to that of ground beef maybe. It was only in my field of view for a second before its hand darted behind the pole. I don't know what that thing was or if I even want to know. A cryptid? Mutated humanoid? An alien? Do I gotta sound the anti-alien alarm? If I see something like that again, should I see if I can go after it? Either way, I might bring a weapon in case I see it again. The second story, this one's way shorter. Similar area in the middle of nowhere. See some bright lights in my rearview mirror, surprised that someone is even out here on this road late at night. The lights though don't look right, they're too bright to be car headlights. I still think nothing of it and think it's just a car. They suddenly disappear. There were no driveways or side roads. I could think of where it turned off if it was a car.
Hey/X/ I wanted to ask you guys for some advice because this shit has been happening to me for a few years and it's driving me crazy. There is a thing that harassed me in my dreams since I saw it in real life. Here is how it began. Be me 18-year-old. Live alone in a uncle's farm in Colorado. It's in the middle of nowhere, but at least I had the internet. One night, I decided to take a cigarette outside and just look at the dark forest in front of the farmhouse. While going back home, I heard some wind bells. WTF.jpg. Realize I don't have any of those anywhere near. Look back and see this entity for the first time. Tall, about 6'5". White semi-transparent, but it emitted some light humanoid form but short arms and long legs. Emitted a weird sound like a whistle. Can't see if it levitates or walk, but it's approaching me slowly. Shit myself and run to the house locking everything. Try to sleep that night but hear the whistle in the vents and some knocking in the windows. Tell my uncle. Laughs and ignores me. The same stuff happened again a few days after. Oh no. JPG. I realize it happens at the same time, at the same place and exact same stuff. Eventually leave the farm. Since I encounter that tall thing every time I move to a new place or spend the night somewhere else beside where I'm living at that moment, I will have a horrible nightmare and he will be a bystander in the background. He sometimes appears sometimes in real life but just seems to observe me from outside where I'm living. It is especially terrifying the fact that only when that thing is in the nightmares they seem to become more vivid and scary than when the thing is not there. First encounter in dreams. Be me. Went back to my home country for vacations before college. Sleep in my childhood house. Dream. Be me outside of my house. Hear screaming. Enter my house. Inside of the house is exactly the same as my house, but the walls are like if they were made of meat and blood. Walk around and hear screaming and a heart beating coming from the house. Go up to my room. I hear screams from help all around the house, but a voice in my head guided me to the room. There was a girl who seemed young and covered her hair. A voice in my head tells me to run. Can't move, and the girl comes to me and tells me, he knows you, Anon, you will not be able to escape even if you wake. He is here. Try to scream in the dream but just air comes out of my mouth. White tall crawler walks to the door of my room. This time it had eyes and a big smile and seemed less transparent. Wake up sweating and the door of my room was open. I recalled shouting that door before sleeping. This was the first time that creature appeared in my dreams and it kept repeating along this year. I will post more encounters later. Second encounter. Be me. Visit my aunt in another state in my home country. She lives in a rural area and it's a small town. Go to sleep. Ah shit, here we go again. Wake up in the town of my aunt. It's night and there is mist everywhere. Walk around and every house is destroyed. It's night but I can perfectly see due to a full moon in the dream. A dog with no skin and covered in blood appears in one of the streets and starts chasing me. Run and turn into one street. There is one mannequin in the street. No more barking from the dog. Go back slowly to get away from the mannequin. Step into something and dozens of mannequins appear. All covered in a dark liquid and pieces of them were broken. Again try to scream but can't. Hear the damn whistle. He was there. Look around and see his damn smile and eyes behind one of the mannequins. Wake up sweating. Again the door is fully open. Always close that door because outside is a little common area. Notice one of my chairs has moved and it's in front of my bed. Can't sleep back that night. Second in real life encounter. Be me. Be in Aunt Town enjoying summer vacations. My aunt's town is famous for a lot of witch stories. Go with friends to get some drinks and go back home late. All my friends live close to the place where we went to drink. Almost 1 a.m. Ended up walking alone back home. Old lady walks up to me. WTF.jpg. You shouldn't be up this late, Anon. I mentioned that I was going home and said thank you for the advice. She laughs and says, I'm not talking about the violence, I'm talking about your friend, he visited in your room the other night, right? Holy shit. You discovered him and he will not leave you no matter where you go. Old lady laughs and leaves walking. Go faster to my aunt's home. Hear the whistle before entering the house. I didn't want to look back. I knew that thing was there. Close the door and try to sleep that night. No nightmares that night, but that I could hear the knocking on my window. Third dream encounter. Be me. Summer vacation is over. Goes to college. Move into the dormitories. Finish moving in and go to sleep. Happens again. Wake up in the dream in my dormitory dream. Go out to the main hall and there is the same girl from the first time. Chases me and wake up. Confused, I went out again. Girl again in the hall. I realized that I still in the dream. Run again and wake up again. Still in the dream. The loop repeats for what it felt like days. In the last loop I hear the whistle. Look at the window of my room in the dream. There it is whistling and smiling at me. Wake up sweating. The room door opened. I'm not sure what he is trying to do, either to annoy me or feed from my fear, but it seems each time he appears in my dreams my door will be open. Fourth nightmare encounter. Be me. Finish fall semester. Go back to my home country. Sleep in my childhood house. Wake up in the dream. In my room, I walk around the house. Things fall around like a poltergeist. Try to leave the house. Girl with long hair appears. Screams at me. Try to leave the house. Outside of the house there is a hall. The hall is made of meat like the first dream. A meat creature appears and runs towards me. Close the door and leave the house by the garage. Outside is normal and it's nighttime. Walk around. Hear a weird sound like a clicking. Creatures start appearing crawling from the houses around. Creatures are like a dog standing on two legs. Covered in black feathers. Black bird peaks instead of heads like a raven. Chase me and I'm able to run to a car and drive away. Hundreds of those things follow me. Hear the whistle. Look at the back mirror. That thing is there smiling and looking at me. Wake up. The door is open. Some stuff in the house is on the floor and stuff all moved around. Okay, continuing at the third in real life encounter. Be me. Be in my hometown. Camping with some friends. Have to go to take a pee. Go to some bushes. My friends laughing on the campfire. Finishing my stuff. The temperature drops suddenly. Hear the whistle and the wind bells. Oh, y.jpg. Look back. It's there. For some reason notice in real life that thing does not have that smile as in the dreams, it's only a white head. Run towards my friends. No one believes me but still check. Nothing. Not sleep that night and just stay inside my tent.
I have a story from when I was a kid. Be me. Probably around 7 years old. Lived in the middle of nowhere surrounded by fields and woods. Raised by my mom and an elderly couple. Sun is setting one evening and I hear a commotion from the backyard. Looking out over the field from the window upstairs. Dog and chickens freaking out for some reason. On the edge of the cornfield see something moving. 3 unusually large black dogs slowly emerge from the corn. One looks at me. For some reason I run downstairs and went out the back door. It's absolutely silent now. They are now standing about 50 yards from the back door. They all look at me. I am overcome with a terror that I have never felt before. Freeze up and cannot move from the back door. They look like something pretending to be a dog. We just stand there staring at each other for a while as I am unable to move. Something grabs my arm and yanks me back into the house violently. It's my old man and he has his shotgun. He slams the door after throwing me inside and I hear 2 shots. Cover my ears and cower because I was so scared. He rushes back inside and latches the door and tells me not to go outside. I look out the window again and they are not there. He tells me not to tell my mom about it when she gets home. They wouldn't let me play outside by myself anymore. Don't say anything about it for nearly 20 years. Casually bring it up to mom after all the years. She gets a little hysterical. Tells me that she saw them before too. They followed her home one time while she was out in the woods collecting mushrooms. Describes them exactly as I saw them without me going into detail. Tells me that she had never been so frightened and said that she doesn't know what they were, but they were intelligent. I wish I would have asked the old man about them before he passed away. I never saw them again and we had moved pretty far away from the old farm.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.